Hello, I hope you find this story interesting. Your feedback and suggestions are always welcome, and subscribing to the channel will only improve our interaction. But now let's talk about what happens next. Imagine a man. He lives quietly, retired, has his own small house with only a single chair by the window, a habit of drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, watching TV and getting lost in his thoughts. And he is well into his 60s, and life hasn't given him many more chances. When he closes his eyes, remembering his youth, he wants only one thing to forget about the mistakes, about how everything went wrong after she left him. Her name, her voice, all of this seemed so important when he was young, and now, it's just an echo that echoes in an empty house. But one message changed everything. He is sitting in his chair as usual, turning on his computer, checking his email. He doesn't expect anything special. And then there she is. Her name is in front of his eyes again, and his heart skips a few beats. It's her, his ex-wife. They have not seen each other for 20 years, and now she is writing to him, asking for help. This is not just a message that can be ignored. This is a message that makes him nervous, doubtful, disgusted. She left, leaving him when things were most difficult. She betrayed him, led him to cheat, and he was left alone with his problems. Why does she want to come back now? What is her goal? This is the question he is looking for an answer to. Again, his heart beats faster, and different thoughts go through his head. What does she want from him after all these years? Does she really need help, or is she just manipulating him? But why now? Anna, why now, when he can hardly remember her face, when he has come to terms with his lonely life? He cannot understand whether he has the right to help someone who betrayed him. And most importantly, does he want to help her? Or maybe he has another plan. Does he still have the strength to help her after everything that happened between them? There will be no answer. At least not yet. And then there is this moment. He reads her words, which seem to be intertwined with promises, assurances that she really needs his help. He reads them again. I made a mistake. I'm losing everything. I need your help. She reminds him of the days when they were young, when their lives were together, when he helped her, was her support. And now she is asking for help. This feeling of guilt begins to grip him again. Should he remain indifferent or help? But his doubts continue to hold him captive. But what is really going on in his soul? Will he really help her, or is this just another chance for him to realize who he is and what he is worth? This moment is the moment of truth, and he faces a difficult choice. And here, when all his emotions and thoughts are intertwined, a single thought appears in his mind. Will I be just an observer? Will I be able to bring her back into my life? But the most important question that arises in his mind is whether he has the right to help the person who abandoned him at the most difficult moment of his life. This question will bother him until the very end. But the interesting thing is that he does not yet know what the answer to this question is. And now we come to the most interesting point: what happens next? Will he refuse it, or will his view of this request change? Now everything depends on him. But will he make the right choice? And will this choice be fatal for him? At this point, the story is just beginning. It leaves us with many unanswered questions. But one thing is certain: every choice has a price. And we will know what price he will have to pay for this choice only at the end of this story. But will he be ready to pay it? So I invite you to explore this story with me, immersing yourself in reflections on what can be forgiven and what cannot. And more importantly, is it possible to give a second chance? Or should you just leave everything in the past and move on? Treat this story as a metaphor for your own life. What would you do in his situation? And leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this fascinating story. He was sitting in his small room, which seemed even more cramped every year. The furniture was old, worn from time to time, but it was also part of this place. This was his place, his home, where he had experienced the best moments of his life and the worst. But now this room felt empty. It was empty because she was gone. He was alone. It was as if she had been here, right next to him, just a short time ago. They had laughed together, talked, planned the future, created memories together. They had experienced so many moments together. But one day she left, just like many years ago. At first he couldn't believe it, then he lost hope, and then he started to get used to it. He tried to find himself in her absence, started to grab hold of new things, new interests, but none of these new hobbies were as important as what was left behind. The moment she left was like a bolt of lightning piercing the dark sky of his heart. It was not just a breakup, it was the destruction of the world they had built together. She took away a part of his soul, his confidence, his desire to love. He was left alone with many unanswered questions that constantly tormented him. Every next day was similar to the previous one, and gradually, life stopped seeming difficult. He learned to live without her, learned to adapt to loneliness. But then, in the middle of his routine, he realized that she had left, and it was the biggest betrayal of his life. 20 years ago, he could not have imagined that he would be sitting here alone, experiencing her absence, her departure, and the pain that would not let go. The same four walls, the same place, and the feeling that he had been abandoned, that everything they had built together had fallen apart. At first, it seemed that time would heal everything. But with each passing year, the pain did not go away but only changed shape. His life, which had been filled with her, became like an empty box just waiting for someone to fill it again. What happened to her feelings? How could she leave it all behind, leave him? He asked these questions every day, looking for answers, even when he realized that her choice was final. She left, and at that moment she didn't think about how it would affect him. Was it her fault, or maybe he should have done more? It was hard to understand what was really going on in her soul. He was constantly tormented by questions and tried to find an answer that would calm his heart. But she was no longer around to answer. He asked questions that could not be answered. He was stuck in the past because he wasn't ready for her to be gone. He was left with this pain that does not go away. His mornings were not as bright as they used to be, and he no longer waited for her, did not see the warmth in her eyes. These simple moments used to be the most precious to him, but now, without her presence, they became difficult, even unbearable. Why was he left alone? How did it happen? Maybe if he had worked harder on himself, understood her more, loved her more, he could have changed everything. He could not stop this stream of thoughts. They all brought him back to the moment when she left, leaving him alone with his feelings, and he never seemed to find a way to let go of those thoughts. Time passed, and then one day, by chance, she reappeared, and his heart skipped a few beats. 20 years later, she came to him asking for help. She looked exhausted, emaciated, and had lost the confidence she had before. He looked at her and could not understand what he was feeling. Was he angry? Or maybe there was still love in him that hadn't left him after she left. Or was it just an emptiness that was trying to fill old wounds? Her words sounded like reconciliation, but he didn't have what she expected in his heart. He knew it would be difficult. And then the most important question began: could he forgive her for leaving him? And would he be ready to accept her back into his life? Was he ready to forget all that she had done, or did he keep the image of her leaving in his soul? Left alone, he realized that you can't just change everything, even if you want to. What could really be forgiven and what could never be forgotten? Could he let her come back, or was it better to leave her in the past? He searched his soul for the answer to this question. He was once again faced with a choice, a choice that would change everything. And it wasn't just a question, it was a moment of truth when he had to make a decision. 20 years is a long time. Long enough to change everything, and at the same time very short if you look at how quickly these years pass. It all started when they were together, young, full of energy, dreams, and desires. Or they didn't that time could be so cruel, didn't think about how much things could change. They believed that love and feelings were something that would always be with them. But 20 years are not just numbers. They are year after year, month after month, day after day. And during this time, each of them has changed, become different, and did not even notice how it happened. Oh, when it happened, they were no longer the same people who started their journey together. 20 years later, and this path has become long, difficult, filled with not only joyful moments, but also pain, disappointment, and loss. They both changed. He began to feel that something was wrong. He no longer saw the same sparkle in her eyes, the same enthusiasm. Her words became less sincere, her gaze cold. And although he couldn't say exactly when it happened, he felt that their relationship was no longer the same. And they began to drift apart, and each of them tried to preserve the picture that was in their hearts at the very beginning. He often sat and thought, why did this happen? Why couldn't we keep what we had between us? But each time the answer remained powerless. No one is to blame for the fact that time changes people. They, like many other couples, could not resist this test. They let time take away a part of their love. 20 years later, when all attempts to save the relationship failed, she left. Without warning, without tears, without questions. She simply decided that she could no longer be there for him. He couldn't understand what had led to this decision. Was it fatigue from everyday life? Or maybe she just couldn't be the person she used to be anymore. Or maybe there was no room in her heart for him anymore. He was left alone, with the thought that maybe she had always planned this. If he had been paying attention, he would have noticed the signs of this even earlier. But what could he say when it happened? He was left with memories of what they were like when they were young and trying to figure out how they could have ruined it all. He had no answer to that question, and he may never find one. So, what's next? Could he go on with his life without her? Or would it be anything like it was before? 20 years later, he returned to himself, to the person he was before she came. And although he could not bring back the past, he still tried to find a new path, a new reality, new days, but it was not the same. He relived all those moments when they solved problems together, laughed, traveled. All these years have become for him just a bright memory that can't be brought back. They were in the past. And although he could not go back and change anything, he realized that a new stage awaited him. 20 years later, she came back. She came to him with the fact that she no longer had the strength to live with what had happened. She came to ask for forgiveness, to fix what she had destroyed, but would he be ready to forgive? Would he be able to forget all the years they had spent without him and take her back? He had the right to choose how to react. But what if he could no longer love her the way he used to? What if time has changed him and what he feels? Perhaps he doesn't have the same feeling left in him that he once had. Perhaps they had both changed so much that their herds could no longer beat in unison. He didn't know if it was possible to restore a relationship after 20 years. Perhaps even if she apologized, even if they decided to start over, their path would never be the same again. Maybe this time they will have a different experience, a different relationship, and it would be a new path, new opportunities. Now he realized that there was no other option for him but to move forward. 20 years had passed, but he was still alive, with his own vision of the future. Was her return a mistake? Or was it a chance for a new beginning? It was a chance he had to take. Sometimes in life there are situations when you think you are trapped. You don't understand exactly how it happened, but you feel that someone is trying to control your actions. They are using you, and you don't even notice how it is happening. This is bribery, manipulation, tools used by those who want to control your life, your decisions, your feelings. And the worst thing is when it happens to people you consider close. Each of us has experienced manipulation, whether at work or in personal relationships. Sometimes it's even hard to notice that you are being manipulated. It can be small, seemingly insignificant gestures that gradually force you to do something you don't want to do. You promised, didn't you? If you do this for me, I'll do this for you. You don't want me to get hurt, do you? These words sound familiar, don't they? They may seem innocent at first glance, but in reality, they are tools to manipulate your mind. While manipulation often starts with small things, it can lead to you losing control of your life. And this happens gradually. First you agree to small requests, then to bigger ones, and eventually you don't notice how you are completely dependent on the desires of another person. But there are other methods used for manipulation. One of them is bribery. Bribery looks like something very simple. I will do this if you do that for me. It can take the form of gifts, promises, or even monetary rewards. But in reality, it is nothing more than an attempt to buy your will, your decisions. It seems that all this is just a good deal, and if you accept this offer, you can get something in return. It can be any material goods or benefits that push you to change your position, actions, or even views. But when you agree to bribery, you actually become a hostage to someone else's intentions. And even if you think that you are in control of the situation, you are already in a trap that the manipulator has set for you. One of the biggest risks of bribery is that people who use it usually have an excellent ability to disguise their true intentions. You may not always be able to immediately notice when someone is trying to offer you something for a price. A bribery can be very sophisticated, disguised as help or kindness. However, if your actions or decisions ultimately benefit only the other person and not you, it may be a sign that you have fallen into the bribery trap. Here's how it works. You start receiving things that seem very beneficial to you. At first, it's small gifts, words of support or compliments. You feel important, and your emotions and feelings try to buy you. But as soon as you find yourself in debt to this person, they start demanding things from you that are beneficial to them. And if you refuse, you may be punished with the same gifts or feelings that you hadn't noticed before. The fight against bribery and manipulation begins with awareness. If you want to be free in your decisions, you need to learn to recognize when your actions and decisions are not genuine but are influenced by external factors. If you feel that something is wrong, that your emotions are being manipulated, that thoughts or actions are being imposed on you, this is the first signal. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Why am I doing this? Is it beneficial to me? Asking these questions will help you regain control of the situation. It's important to remember that not every gift, not every help, and not every compliment is for your benefit. Sometimes these manifestations can be just a part of a manipulative strategy that wants to get something more from you than just your emotions. In the end, only you can decide how to act in situations where bribery or manipulation is used. You always have a choice either to be influenced or to remain true to yourself, your beliefs and principles. But remember, when you allow yourself to be manipulated, you cease to be the master of your life. This is not just a danger to your well-being, but also to your inner freedom. Sometimes we live in an environment where everything seems to be in place, and we, the people around us, play their roles, and we understand who is who, how, what, and why things are happening. But all this can be just the tip of the iceberg. Over time, situations arise when reality begins to tickle our perception, and we begin to notice details that do not match what we had previously seen. Uncovering secrets is a process where things that were hidden from us come to the surface. Sometimes these secrets can be shocking, sometimes they open up new horizons, but they always change your perception of the world around you. Uncovering secrets is not always a search for something specific or secret. Sometimes it is simply a process of making connections between factors that seem insignificant at first glance. People we spend time with, families, colleagues, friends, they may all have some secrets they keep to themselves. But the point is not to look for something specific, but to notice when something deviates from the usual path. For example, Why has your partner become more silent? Or why is one of your relatives acting strangely? Secrets can be fragile threads that lead to things that people don't want to show or say. Sometimes the smallest details can open up a whole world of hidden stories. Maybe it's just a tone of voice, maybe it's a change in behavior. But when you start noticing these details, you are on a path where secrets begin to be revealed. The fun begins when you start to realize that something more may be happening to you than just a change in the behavior of another person. The secrets that we often try to hide may not be just about us. They may be about other people, situations, or even organizations. Imagine that you find out that there is a person in your environment who is hiding some part of their life from you. It could be a friend who suddenly changes and starts acting mysteriously, or a relative who carries a heavy burden of past events. But why do they hide it? And why has it become noticeable now? If it's someone you've known for a long time and who has always been open with you, it can be shocking to start to discover secrets. You start asking questions. What happened? Why did this happen? You want to understand what is behind this change. What is the real motive for the change? There are many ways to find out what is hidden. Some are more obvious, others are more complex and sophisticated. One way is to observe carefully. This can be observing words, gestures, looks, behavior that was not previously characteristic of this person. Sometimes it can help to observe those who have more information. People who have no interest in hiding the truth can sometimes tell you more than you think. Another way is active listening, where you listen carefully to every detail of the conversation, not only what is said, but also what is not said. Perhaps the person is talking about their job, but they keep avoiding talking about certain people or topics that seem relevant to the situation. This may already be a signal that there is something they are trying to hide. When uncovering secrets, you may encounter some internal emotions that are difficult to control. Anxiety, doubt, even fear are normal reactions when you start to learn the truth. But it is important to remember that these emotions are not always a signal that you should lose control. They help you realize that it's important, that you need to learn more. Of course, uncovering secrets doesn't always bring joy or satisfaction. Sometimes it can lead to bitterness and pain. The truth may be completely different from what you expected, and it may force you to rethink your relationships with the people around you. However, it is the discovery of secrets that allows you to understand the situation in its entirety and make decisions based on real facts, not on perceptions or assumptions. Of course, every secret has a price. And even after you find out the truth, the question arises, is it worth revealing? Sometimes revealing a secret can lead to unnecessary pain or conflict. Sometimes it's better to just leave it at that. At the same time, there are situations when the truth is necessary to move on, to make the right decision and take important steps in life. But in the end, it is your choice whether to reveal the secret or leave it in the past. Remember that sometimes the truth is better left unknown, and sometimes it helps you take important steps towards a better future. Pressure is an invisible force that can affect us without our consent. Sometimes it comes from the outside, and sometimes we put it on ourselves. We have all experienced moments when we are overwhelmed with many duties, responsibilities, or demands. And then we face the feeling of guilt, which is associated with dissatisfaction with the fact that we cannot fulfill all these requirements 100%. The feeling of guilt can be both internal and external, and it often intersects with the feeling of pressure imposed on us by people or circumstances. Often the pressure comes from the environment. It can be from colleagues, family, friends, or even society as a whole. They may have certain expectations of us, career achievements, family roles, social behavior. All of these can be a source of pressure. When you can't meet these demands, you feel like you're not fulfilling your responsibilities, or worse, that you're not living up to the expectations of others. Consequences. Sometimes this pressure can be so intense that it feels like the whole world is focused on your actions. For example, you may feel that you have not reached a certain level in your career, even though you work hard, or that your children are not making the progress you would consider normal. A feeling like a failure leads to thoughts that you are to blame for something, even though you are doing the best you can. And that's where the guilt comes in, not because you really did something wrong, but because it seems that you don't meet the requirements of other people. The other side of this process is the pressure we put on ourselves. And we live in a world where we are taught to be successful, strong, and perfect. And often we cannot cope with all the demands we set for ourselves. It's important to remember that the idealism imposed on us by society is not reality. However, we constantly strive to achieve high standards. When we do not reach this ideal, it creates a sense of inferiority, which leads to internal pressure. We often set our goals so high that when we fail to achieve them, we feel guilty and think that we are not good enough or strong enough. But no matter how hard we try to be perfect, everyone has their limitations. Therefore, it is important to understand that pressure can also arise from excessive demands on oneself. Guilt is an emotion that arises when we believe that we have done something wrong or failed to fulfill our duty. It can have both external and internal sources. Sometimes guilt stems from our own beliefs that we should do more than we can, or that we should reach some standard we have set for ourselves. This feeling can be very difficult and even destructive. It becomes a constant companion in our lives. Guilt can affect our mental health. It can lead to anxiety, depression, and stress. When we feel guilty, begin to doubt ourselves, our worth, our abilities. Sometimes we feel that, despite our best efforts, we are not good people or do not meet the requirements that others place on us. Pressure at work is one of the main causes of stress and guilt. Many people feel that they should work more hours, accomplish more tasks, and be at their best all the time. When this is not possible, there is a feeling of guilt, as if you are not achieving a sufficient level of performance. This is especially important for those who hold high positions or are striving for career advancement. However, it is important to remember that achieving career success should not be the first priority in our lives. Work-life balance, health, and relaxation are what really matter. Mental and physical health is much more important than professional achievements, and you need to remember this even when you feel pressure from the outside world. There are several ways to deal with pressure and guilt. First, it is important to learn to say no. When we can't do everything that is required of us, we need to admit it and give ourselves permission to rest or do less. You can't constantly wear yourself out for the sake of others. It is important to set boundaries and not allow other people or your own demands to violate those boundaries. Another way is to accept yourself as you are, with all your flaws and weaknesses. Everyone is imperfect, and that's okay. It is important to understand that you don't always need to be the best in all areas of life. True happiness comes when we know how to be kind to ourselves. It is also useful to work with emotions and learn to let go of guilt. Remember that we all make mistakes, and this does not mean that we are not worthy of love or respect. It is important to accept your mistakes and use them as an opportunity for development, not as a reason for self-criticism. Pressure and guilt are a part of everyone's life, but it is important not to let them control us. The ability to cope with these emotions gives us the opportunity to live a healthier and happier life. Remember that you are not alone in this world, and that everyone has their own problems and challenges. And it's important to be kind to yourself and remember that a person's true value is not their successes, but how they treat themselves and others. Changing the approach to any situation or problem is not only a change of strategy, but also an opportunity for personal development and growth. Many people in their lives face moments when their previous methods or views on certain situations stop working or do not bring the desired result. At such moments, we often feel the urge to change our approach, but this often requires courage, determination, and readiness for change. A change of approach can be both to external circumstances and to internal beliefs. It can be about a way of thinking, a way of acting, or even a change in behavior. Many people find that in order to move forward, they not only need to change the circumstances around them, but also change their attitude towards them. Thinking is the basis of all our decisions and actions. If we want to change our approach to something, first of all, we need to change our perception of the situation. If we used to treat a certain problem as an obstacle, now it is important to learn to perceive it as an opportunity for growth or development. This requires some psychological work, as well as a willingness to change. For example, many people have a habit of constantly worrying about what could go wrong. But over time, you can develop the skill of seeing these moments as lessons rather than disasters. Seeing failure not as the end, but as a stage on the road to success is the first mindset change that needs to be implemented to change the approach. When our perspective changes, the next step is to change our strategic approach. Many of us are accustomed to following proven paths, even if these paths do not bring the desired result. In this case, it is important to recognize that what worked before is no longer effective and start looking for new ways to solve the problem. This may even mean changing the way we plan our actions. If we used to plan everything down to the last detail, now we can try to leave more room for flexibility, adapting to changing circumstances. In other words, it may mean that we now try to act faster, not waiting for ideal conditions, but still being cautious. A change in strategy can also include changes in the way we interact with other people. For example, instead of imposing our point of view, we can try to listen to others more and find compromises. One important aspect of changing your approach is being prepared for uncertainty. When we decide to change our methods or strategies, we often face unintended consequences. A change of approach does not always have clear and predictable outcomes, and this can cause a sense of anxiety or fear of the unknown. However, it is important to realize that uncertainty is part of the change process. There is no guarantee that a change in approach will lead to instant success. However, if we are willing to adapt to new conditions, learn from our mistakes, and keep moving forward, a change in approach becomes a powerful tool for success. Whereas we used to be afraid to make mistakes, seeing them as a sign of incompetence or failure, a change in approach involves accepting mistakes as part of learning. Every mistake is an opportunity for improvement and development. The sooner we accept our mistakes as an integral part of the process, the sooner we can move toward success. Sometimes the best ideas come after we've made a mistake and analyzed why it happened. That's why it's important not to be afraid to experiment, look for new ways, and keep trying, even if the result is not always what we expect. Changing our approach also means moving from theoretical thinking to real action. We can plan and think a lot about how to change things, but the main step is to implement these changes in our daily lives. Sometimes the biggest obstacle to change is the fear of starting. For many people, changing their approach may look like a very big step that seems impossible. But it's actually important to start small. For example, you can change one habit or behavior, gradually moving on to more significant changes. The most important thing is to start, and then everything will be much easier. Another important factor that can help with change is the support of others. When we try to change our approach to life or work, it is very important that we have people who support and believe in us. It can be family, friends, or even colleagues. Sometimes just having someone who believes in your capabilities gives you the strength to take the next step. The support of others is also important because changing your approach often requires emotional stability. And when we face setbacks, it's good to have people around to help us gather our strength and overcome difficulties. Changing our approach is a process that requires time, patience, and a willingness to change not only our actions but also our thinking. It is important to remember that any change is an opportunity for development and learning. Each new approach, even if it does not bring immediate results, opens up new horizons and gives you the opportunity to see the world from a different perspective. So don't be afraid to change your approach, look for new ways and develop, even if it seems difficult or scary. Conflict of choice is one of those situations that we all face throughout our lives. From time to time, we have to make difficult decisions where each option has its pros and cons. It can be a choice between two career opportunities, between two people, or even between two ways of spending time. The choice is not always black and white, and often both options seem right or attractive. Psychologically, a conflict of choice is often linked to the fear of making a mistake or making the wrong decision. When we are faced with an important choice, our minds automatically begin to evaluate all the possible consequences of each option. Sometimes this can lead to confusion or even paralysis due to overthinking. This is why we so often experience internal conflict when faced with a difficult choice. In addition, many people are afraid that the chosen path will not bring what they expect. This can be fear of future consequences or a feeling that the chosen path leads to inevitable difficulties. However, the most important to realize is that there is no perfect choice, and each option has its advantages and disadvantages. One of the biggest reasons why we face a conflict of choice is the fear of making a mistake. Many people do not want to make a choice that they will have to correct later. This leads to people thinking too much and doubting their decisions instead of acting. This fear can also lead to a person not making a choice at all, which further exacerbates internal conflict. It is important to understand that mistakes are not disasters, but part of the process of growth and development. They give us the opportunity to learn, correct our actions, and move forward. Sometimes even failures can open up new opportunities for us, so it is important not to be afraid of mistakes, but to use them as experience. When we are faced with an important choice, we often try to carefully analyze each option. We collect all possible information, compare pros and cons to minimize risks, and choose the best option. But often this analysis leads to even more confusion. Sometimes the options can be so close in terms of their characteristics that the choice becomes a real challenge. This can be, for example, a choice between career opportunities that are equally advanced, between two people who have the same positive qualities, or even a choice between two vacation options that both look attractive. In such cases, we may feel that we cannot make a choice without the risk of regretting our decision, but it is important to realize that it is impossible to get the perfect result in every case. Sometimes we just have to trust our instincts and make a choice without diving too deeply into analyzing each moment. Conflicting choices can also be exacerbated by external factors such as other people's expectations or social stereotypes. We often face situations where our environment has certain ideas about what is the right or best option. This could be pressure from family, friends, or colleagues who have their own views on what you should choose. Such external influences can affect our decision by making us doubt our own wants and needs. A pressure from others can cloud our ability to make independent choices because we become afraid of disappointing others or being judged for making the wrong decision. It is important to learn how to balance our own desires with the influence of others. Instead of choosing only what others like, you need to be aware of your needs and look for options that are right for you. Time also plays a big role in the conflict of choice. In some situations, we have a limited amount of time to make a decision, which adds to the stress and anxiety. Sometimes it feels like we have to make a decision right away so we don't miss a chance or miss an opportunity. This creates a sense of pressure and can lead to hasty decisions without proper thought. In such cases, it is important to remember that the best decision is not the one that avoids mistakes, but the one that strikes the best balance between all possible outcomes. Sometimes it's worth giving yourself more time to think about it, so that you don't take a hasty step into the unknown. How to overcome the conflict of choice It is important to find inner harmony and realize that there is no single right choice. There are pros and cons to every decision, and often the best option is the one that best aligns with your inner beliefs and values. If you feel inner peace about your choice, it means you have found the right path for you. And it's important not to let external factors or fear of making mistakes cloud your decision-making ability. Remember that every choice is a new opportunity, and even if you make a mistake, you can learn from it and move on. A conflict of choice is an integral part of our lives. Choosing between options can be difficult and even paralyzing, but it is important to remember that every choice has its own value and provides an opportunity for development. Regardless of whether we make the right choice or make a mistake, each step along the way opens up new horizons and helps us find our own path to happiness. Open communication is an important part of any relationship, especially when it comes to trust and understanding between people. But sometimes even frank conversations can lead to unexpected and painful consequences. A betrayal, which is often the result of hidden feelings or omissions, can change the course of a relationship and cause a lot of emotional pain. Open conversation in a relationship is what allows people to be real with each other. When you openly discuss your feelings, thoughts, plans, and desires, it allows you to create a deeper level of trust. However, there are often things in a relationship that you don't want to discuss. Then a dilemma arises: is it possible to maintain harmony in a relationship without expressing everything in your heart? The answer is not always clear. Sometimes people are afraid that an open conversation will lead to conflict or a breakup. Fear that the other party will not understand or accept your feelings can make you keep silent about important things. However, it is this silence that often gives rise to distrust and eventually leads to betrayal. Paradoxically, the very thing we fear when we remain silent can be even worse than open discussion. Betrayal often begins with misunderstandings between people, and each partner holds emotions or unspoken truths. When there is no communication, people begin to look for a way out of the situation, sometimes in the form of betrayal. And this can be physical betrayal or betrayal in terms of emotional distance, when one of the partners begins to feel neglected and seek support from another person. Hidden emotions, unexpressed feelings, and concerns can create a sense of dissatisfaction, which eventually leads to a person looking for answers not in a conversation with a partner, but in outside situations. This may be an attempt to find what is missing in the relationship, whether it is attention, support, or physical contact. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. When trust is broken, everything else starts to falter. An open conversation can build trust, or, conversely, reveal true feelings and intentions that are not always pleasant for the other party. However, even in this case, it is important not to lose the ability to understand and find a compromise. Betrayal is not just a physical act, it is also a betrayal of trust that has been broken through silence, lack of emotional intimacy, or covert actions. It happens that one of the partners no longer feels the connection they had before and decides to change the situation without talking about their feelings. This only increases internal disappointment and reduces the chances of rebuilding trust in the future. Regaining trust after a betrayal is one of the most difficult tasks in a relationship. Sometimes, after the betrayal has been discovered, it is impossible to return to what was before. It is important to remember that betrayal is always not only the result of certain actions, but also a reflection of deeper emotional problems that were hidden in the relationship. This can be a lack of genuine communication, unspoken concerns, or unmet needs. However, rebuilding trust is possible, albeit difficult. Rebuilding trust requires open conversations about what happened, how each partner feels, and how mutual understanding can be restored. Honesty, mutual respect, and a willingness to change are key elements of this process. A betrayal has painful consequences not only for the one who has been betrayed, but also for the one who betrayed. Only when we experience the consequences of our actions can we realize how important it would be to avoid betrayal through open communication. Because betrayal can leave not only emotional scars but also psychological trauma that can have long-term consequences for both parties. The betrayed person often feels humiliated and betrayed, their self-esteem may drop, and the relationship will no longer be the same. From that moment on, the question arises, is it possible to continue together? Is it possible to restore the harmony that existed before the betrayal? The answer to this question depends on how both partners will treat this painful experience. One of the most important aspects after an affair is the issue of forgiveness. Is it possible to forgive a person who has caused pain? This question often raises great doubts because forgiveness requires not only time, but also a willingness to let go of resentment and painful memories. However, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It is simply a way to get rid of an unnecessary burden. Forgiveness does not always mean getting back into a relationship. Sometimes, it is a way to get rid of an emotional burden and give yourself a chance for a new beginning. However, if you choose to stay together, it means that you need to openly discuss everything that happened and start working on rebuilding trust. Open conversation is the best way to maintain a healthy relationship, and a betrayal, in turn, is the result of not finding the strength to be honest with each other. Sometimes we are afraid to express our thoughts or remain silent for too long, which leads to painful consequences. To avoid betrayal, it is important to learn to speak openly about your feelings without fear of being understood and honest. If you don't want to lose a relationship, always remember that truth and honesty are the key to maintaining trust and harmony between you.